I'd like to introduce Dan Bautista. He was our former diagnostic vet in Delaware. He now works for Zoetis as a veterinarian, and he troubleshoots and helps out on farms around the country now. So Dan today is going to give us a talk about poultry health here on the shore and what we're seeing. Dan?
Thank you very much, John. You know, there's a show on TV called Kitchen Confidential. So this is Chicken Confidential right here, okay? But anyway, yeah, I've been with Zoetis for 4 years now. 18 years previously working at the diagnostic lab, working on chickens that are submitted in there for quality control, mostly sick chicken samples. So, saw quite a bit. I decided to take it to the next step and kind of be on the solution side approach too. So we make vaccines. We also own all the hatchery vaccination. They call it MREX. Basically, those are robotics that inject birds, millions of chicks or millions of eggs vaccinated a day. So that we own that. As a matter of fact, I just came from Pennsylvania. Did some environmental swabbing on a hatchery over there. So we're pretty much everywhere, but I'm fortunate to be concentrated here in Delmarva. Sometimes this job, some of my colleagues would be flying every week, but they're kind of spread wide. That doesn't mean that they're kind of responsive to a certain region. So I'm pretty blessed, I think, to be in the Delmarva and make relationships, because I think that's what it's all about. Make those relationships and make a difference in people's lives, right? So those are 20-something-year-old flock supervisors from a certain company, and we are doing a lot of training out there. They decided to say, I'm sure you got some questions for me. I'll start with the hot topics, right? So there's 2 diseases they probably has been talked about right now, and I'd like to get some of your feedback as well, because I certainly don't have all the answers, but here are some observations, right? All right, before this, these are actual pictures not too far from here, right? Last week of November, and there was high-path AI in a broiler flock not too far from here. So again, just a reminder, and we don't want to pound this too much. The waterfowl, the wild birds still have the virus. It's our responsibility to keep it outside of the house. I don't really recommend shooting wild waterfowl because there's millions of them. But what you gotta have in your control is your footwear, right? So that footwear has to be dedicated in that farm, preferably in that house if you could. If not, you still have those disposable boots, and I really believe that. And I'm certainly one that practices that. If I work for 6 different companies, I certainly don't want to be the vet to be famous for being the typhoid Mary or something, right? I could easily spread stuff. Yeah, so I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. All right, have you heard this term, huddling flushing syndrome? I believe there's several farms here in Delmarva that had some inexplicable birds that are huddling and they were flushing and they wouldn't move for anything, and some of them will start dying by the dozens and even the hundreds. So it's kind of frustrating. I'll show you some pictures so you will relate. Of course, misery loves company. When some of these clients of ours started talking to their colleagues in other states, they said, we've seen that for the past 2 to 3 years. We have it here in the Southeast. We have it here in the Arkansas area as well. And so we got together and shared some experiences. This is a normal house, right? You want it all even. See the difference? That's not even the worst of it. Now they start to clump in between the lines, right? Okay. And here's a picture of a farm somewhere in Alabama, Georgia. Obviously, they lost a lot of birds, right? But look how much huddling there is going on, hence the name, right? Huddling. And the only thing that helps it, when they start huddling and start to have flushing diarrhea, and then they will make this place right here, this section right here in between drinker lines, really wet and muddy. The only thing that, there's very few things that helps, but one of the things that helps is really early intervention with dry litter. You have to put it in there and run more air and heat up the house. I think at the tail end, that's what gets most of the birds. When you're in this vicious cycle, the birds are stressed because they're sitting on that wet litter, and they get more stressed, and then they will be having flushing diarrhea more, and then they'll have dehydration. Dehydration is what really kills them. But it's amazing. I got a call, unsolicited call from one of the veterinarians here, but he's based in Texas. I thought he was gonna talk to me about something serious, but anyway, I said, "Hey, let me tell you about the huddling flushing syndrome I had somewhere in Arkansas." I said, there's huddling and flushing, and then there's huddling and flushing. Some of those cases, I'm still investigating them, but you can drive a truck right through the middle of the house because the birds are huddled on the drinker lines, and there's nothing that's going to make him move. I mean, you can walk through the birds, but you won't be successful. But, however, on the other hand, there are cases too where we think that the grower's behind on the ventilation right after brooding, and they really couldn't turn it back once this vicious cycle kind of starts rolling. Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the picture. Why is the indoor open? Is that door open, or is it just a reflection?
No, it's open. They're trying to get the litter delivered and distributed.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see the pile over here of shavings.
Okay.
Yeah. So it must be pretty bad if it's coming by the truckloads, right? Not by the bales. Yeah, you can see there's a lot of space already. They'll probably have lost a few thousand birds at this point. It usually starts around 21 days, which I think necrotic enteritis and cocci has some role here to play, where it kind of starts the ball rolling in the wrong direction. And obviously, if it's not caught early, that diarrhea and stress and enteritis, basically, dysbiosis, if it's not caught early and they still get stressed and they start huddling for some reason, explicable reason, they would huddle on the wet part of the litter. I mean, for us, right? I mean, why would you stay in the muck? You want to stay in the middle, right? But they don't. And some of that can be explained by out of control bug problem. There are certain cases where the bugs or the darkling beetle infestation is so bad that the birds seem to be running away from something. And the place where the bugs aren't there much is in the muck, because the bugs don't want to get trapped into the mud. They want to be in that loose litter. But that doesn't explain everything, because you would have farmers that say, look, there's not a whole lot of darkling beetles here, Dan. We did some pretty good darkling beetle control, and yet I still lost 500 a day. So that's the reason why I got called. They say, hey, you've been with some of those kidney bronchitis 10 years ago. This one looks like the real thing. And all of the cases that have come up so far is negative for this virus called kidney bronchitis virus, or you probably hear it, 1639. It was discovered in 2011 in Sussex County. And now it's widespread all over the United States. I'm quick to correct some people that says, oh, well, it spread out of Delaware. I said, well, no, I mean, it really got it from really in the Northeast in Pennsylvania. It came out of some of these long-lived birds, layers. So that's one of those things too. These diseases usually come out of long-lived birds. And broilers are not long-lived birds, We grow them and they grow to the processing plant. They don't get distributed around, okay? However, it looks like it's something infectious, right? But here's the thing, we've been talking about it. In certain houses, the mortality stops where the migration fence is. If it's infectious, like a virus, it shouldn't do that, right? Most of the time, it's in the brooder house, though. When you think about the brooder section, I mean, that's probably where you got the density, and that's probably where it kind of starts with certain pathogens that we probably don't know about that attacks the gut. There's certainly viruses, there's certainly bacteria, there's certainly cocci. It just needs to get the ball rolling. And then there's a point of no return when you get this scenario right here. It's pretty scary. The first thing that they get called us upon and say, hey, look, please rule out bird flu. then later on, what are the other things that you can rule out? Certainly not cocci. It's not enteritis. It's not this kidney bronchitis that we have. Yes, James. The association between lights and this is not really very close. It's more on where they sit, and obviously, feed is also a consideration. I work with certain companies, and they're pretty open. I mean, they say, "Dan, get the feed, send it to whatever lab you want," and we look for mycotoxin, which is really moldy feed, right? Moldy feed is certainly something that sometimes we call it hot spots. Nobody really deliberately uses moldy feed, but certain hot spots where there's more concentration than anything else. But then again, it shouldn't just happen on the brooder side, right? So, different things. Yes.
When it happens one flock, will it typically happen again the next flock?
It doesn't, for the most part. Yeah. Good question. Yes, Ashley.
Is it a possibility that the farmer didn't make the chicken count soon enough and it just got crowded too soon?
I would think that would be a factor, especially to get it started. Yeah. But again, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Yes, sir.
Did you say they were brooding or hundreds of the wet spots?
Yes. Yeah.
Would it be looking for?
I think so too. Yeah, because the litter, when it gets wet, it starts to have that composting effect. Yes.
I have a problem, but we have the problem in the starting, the first 4 days or first 14 days.
Okay.
Hurdling.
Okay.
They say we need to put a 1 degree set temperature more raise up.
Right.
And some last flock I have it, but not on the whole brood chamber. Only next one to curtain section.
Right.
And first they think so maybe a heater is not working over there.
Right.
But we don't have a problem in the middle of the flock. We have a problem on here, mostly in the first 7 days.
Right.
They call it SSR.
RSS. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Yeah, but I just start with the sort of like the headline, right? What's the burning topic? Yeah. Yes, Jenny. Right. Right. So so it's not my direct experience, right? But this veterinarian goes through all their records. I mean, they go through the controllers, and basically they can see how much runtime there is, and there's a prescribed runtime for houses, and they say, okay, well, they're not running enough air here, and those are the ones that they can reverse the tide. I mean, which means like, okay, I mean, if you're not running air, that's your main way of removing moisture, right? Not just ammonia. You're running the ventilation, not just to improve air quality, but actually move moisture. And as you know, if you're burning propane, and we all are, right? Most of us. I mean, a gallon of propane means a gallon of water inside that house too. That's the byproduct. Yeah. Thing starts around 18, 21 days. Probably it's not tunnel yet, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Is it seen more in cold weather?
I would say yes. Yeah. And there might be other viruses too. I mean, IBH and all this thing. I mean, there's, this term, death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's almost like a Chinese torture technique before, right? It's not just one thing. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, let's use an American term, perfect storm. That's a movie too, right? When different factors kind of converge, and they just create a spectacular effect. And so certainly this one just captures the imagination when you lose like 700 birds a day. That gets people's attention. But what's good though is when you get to it, and I think James can talk about it too. I mean, diarrhea is a stress response too. It's a physiological response, I mean, even in 1639 positive birds, when we're doing some experiments in University of Delaware, when we experimented with this field virus, the birds don't just die. Some of them were just feverish. But you know what triggered them? When there was an inexplicable drop in temperature. We didn't mean to do it, but there was a 10-degree drop in temperature, and guess what? The birds started having flushing diarrhea. Same thing with RSS too. Same thing with a lot of diseases. When these birds get just chilled, usually chilled, that's a problem. They just go in this dark path. I mean, it's relevant. I mean, certainly, you might have houses that might have new litter, but it's kind of spread thin, but it's not deep. You don't have the absorbency that you have in old litter when it's fluffy and 3 to 4 inches too. I mean, that's the reason why some growers, even on old litter, would still outcompete one on new litter. I mean, that was also a learning curve for me. So there are certain cases like that too. And if you got thin litter, for a variety of reasons, I mean, there's the base there is cold. It's wicking away heat from those chicks. So a lot of those are interrelated. All right. So, I mean, you can see the birds are muddy. Okay. They huddle up and they huddle more. Right. All right. So again, when they're too cold like that, they don't even want to eat or drink, and eventually they will die from dehydration. So in my world, this is what a normal kidney looks like. See those? Okay. And look at this. Looks like a brain, just because of all that uric acid, that white cap in the feces. There's no water to flush it off the system. I mean, just imagine how that bird feels, right? It doesn't care about eating or drinking. All right, yeah. So you can see here, this is not a fully formed poop. I couldn't stay away from poopology, right? I mean, I guess I knew it, right? So this is not fully formed right here, and you can see the what we call it the diarrhea stripe. You can see it's not fully propulsive diarrhea, but it's wet enough, and those birds, when they converge like that, they can really make a muck out of where they're staying. Right? You can see here it's not fully formed. So again, as a grower, try to pay attention to how the droppings look like, right? See, this one is basically liquid. They just splatter over here, right? So that's not good. And eventually you'll have problems with paw burns. Okay? And we talked about darkling beetles as well. In between, especially in between the feeder lines, that's where they want to be because it's dry. And it's also a lot of grains in there, a lot of feed, right? So they kind of feed off of that too. And the feeder line, it's dark. This darkling beetles want to be in a dark, moist, warm environment. So check that out. I think for the most part, in certain companies, the cost share for darkling beetle control wasn't there, so there wasn't an incentive to really go after it. And I think they rallied back and did something about it. All right, so, let me get out of this way. I feel inadequate as a veterinarian when I say, so far we really don't know exactly what it is, but we have some ideas. But that's what it is. When a veterinarian calls it a syndrome, we probably just know less than half of what we're talking about. So, we'd like to hear from you guys. But anyway, we're still working on it. But I talked to the company that has most of this. They said that they see it more in, let me see if I get this right. They see it more in the large birds, not more on the small bird program. I said, so what's your theory there? I said, well, the small bird program probably is more dense. They produce more heat. It triggers the temperature control system. I think they run more air. I get it in a way, but then again, usually in my brain, when you say density equals more diseases in a lot of cases, so you pack them in. But in this case, they seem to say, we only got 2 cases of large birds. Most of them are on the small bird side. So I guess it has quite a bit to do with ventilation and that vicious cycle. You just don't want to get started on that. Remember, 21 days is, if you're vaccinating for cocci, that's the peak of cocci shedding. That's when the birds don't feel too good. That's the reason why you use a lot of copper around that age. What you want is for them to, take the hit from a little bit of cocci, and then they'll be immunized for the rest of the flock. That's the secret for cocci vaccination. John, did you see any? Because you've been through some of this. All right, moving on. There's another one that just popped up. Have you heard about the swollen head syndrome? Okay. So this one is really, I mean, we have probably 2 farms right now that has this. So it's almost like, great, now we have another one to worry about, right? Right, I would say 2 weeks or less. No, yeah, and I think there was a report today in another company. So which means this is transmissible, this is infectious, okay? And what you will see is swollen heads. Obviously, this is not a chicken. This is a turkey. Okay? I have a point to make, trust me. Okay. So it's been in turkeys for years, okay? Not in broilers in this area. Now, it might be in some broilers in like Minnesota for a while. They call it avian metapneumovirus. That's a mouthful, okay? Let's just call it for this purposes pneumovirus or swollen head disease, okay? Now, other diseases will cause swollen heads. But this one, if you got birds that have swollen faces and you'll be losing several dozen and they just jumped up to several hundred. I think this farm, the first farm had like 5 per thousand mortality in climbing, okay? Anyway, you can see the face right here. It's a little swollen on the sinus, okay? All right. So what you have is sinusitis, wet eyes, and then mortality could be a third. Obviously, if it's in a breeder or layer facility, you know, they would be losing egg production. Right, enough of that turkey because we're not turkey people, right? Anyway, in chickens, it's around 4 to 6 weeks old when it happens. Mild respiratory signs, you know, I mean, sinusitis, wet eyes, that could be bronchitis. I mean, that could be like winter stuff going on, right? But here's the kicker. When you have secondary E. coli coming in, that's where most mortality starts heating up. And I'll show you what E. coli looks like. If you got any questions, feel free to just jump in, okay? All right. This is a breeder farm in North Carolina, right here. Yeah. So right now this swollen head syndrome is in our neighborhood. Well, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina. They got some in Georgia. So it's kind of spreading real quick, right? So yeah, exactly. You know what a sick bird looks like, right? Like right there. Yeah, it's really a sad. Okay, this is a broiler. This is a broiler. Okay, so that, you know, I mean, look at this face right here, right? Swollen. Okay, and you see the dirt. There's the dirt because it's mucus coming out. So the dust would, you know, stick to it, and then you'll see the dirt. Okay. Yep. You know, this is a sick bird post right here. All right. The thing is, pneumovirus does not do it. That does not do it alone. You have that initial disease, like a viral infection, right? And then you got other bacterial infection coming in. That's the reason why when we get sick, that's what the doctor's treating with antibiotics, right? We got the 2 nurses over here. Okay. So E. coli is the most common and ORT as well. So it's almost like when you pile up one pathogen over the other, it just, you know, makes the outcome more severe. Anytime you see basically yellow stuff, that's pus. Okay? That is a sign of bacterial infection. That's when you get doubling mortality at this point. All right. In breeders, it also attacks the brain. That's why you'll see birds stargazing. So that's never normal. When you get birds looking at the roof, you better have some lab tests going on because other than the pneumovirus, Newcastle disease can also cause this. We haven't had Newcastle disease since forever, but that's as bad as AI. Okay, right? So these are breeders. Look at them. I mean, they're just looking up. Their necks are twisted. All right. So all of that showstopper. We'll move on. I'm a big believer that we should spend more of our time on the ones that are more common, because those are the ones we face every day, right? So according to Lasher Laboratory, this is what's Lasher Laboratories in University of Delaware. They probably take 60 to 70% of process all the sick bird cases in Delmarva. So they're certainly the authority on what's going on, right? So no surprise, this is 2023 to 2024. If it's winter time, guess what? We got wintertime diseases. So it's really respiratory problems that takes the cake, right? When you close the houses up, you have respiratory viruses in there, primarily bronchitis. You also have immunosuppressive viruses in there piling up. So you got Gumboro disease. You got inclusion body hepatitis. So primarily inclusion body hepatitis is another immunosuppressive disease. But it plays with Gumboro to make it more severe. Okay, enteritis is also a problem. Again, cocci likes cold, warm, wet environments, right? So again, it's not a surprise. That's the reason why most companies do not vaccinate with cocci vaccine in the wintertime. Okay, it's because it's more stress on the bird. They start with your birds around April. And of course, gangrenous dermatitis. Anybody who's got an experience with dermatitis over here? Yeah.
Not lately.
Not lately. It's kind of frustrating. The birds look great. And then 5 to 7 weeks, they started dying in dozens. And those are some of the best looking birds too. So it's pretty frustrating too. On the veterinary side, it's pretty frustrating because you tell the grower 3 different things to do. And, it may or may not have an impact. Okay? But certainly, all right, let's look. Yes.
Okay, one thing on dermatitis was, we had it for years, and when we started winter
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It had to take the industry too to really consider windrowing. So, I mean, it's disruptive, but it worked, right? So, respiratory problem. When we say when we say respiratory problem, it's usually caused by infectious bronchitis. We vaccinate for this in the hatchery, okay? But since it's a live vaccine, it needs a lot of TLC from growers as well, because what could be the solution could also be a problem. So when the birds are stressed, or you got them and they're not, the best quality chicks, they're already compromised, then the vaccine could make mortality jump up as well. So it's not always entirely your fault, obviously, right? So you work with what you got. But again, look at this. This is not the swollen head syndrome. This is not the pneumovirus. But look, it looks exactly like it. So, but anyway, that's going to be the vet's problem to tease them all out, right? What you need to do is when you see this, call immediately so they can send it to the lab, right? What you don't want is this really slowing down the plant. Obviously, it will affect your performance, but when you're slowing down a plant, that company is losing tens of thousands of dollars pretty much in a day. Yeah. All right. Again, that's the topic today, swollen heads, right? This is a different disease. It's called infectious coryza. It's around backyard chickens around here. If I swab backyard chickens, I will find it. I guess what I'm saying is stay away from backyard chickens. We don't have to blame Pennsylvania all the time for every new disease that comes in here. We just look for long-lived birds, and those long-lived birds are backyard flocks, right? So you may not be doing it, but be mindful, who you're hiring and all those folks that do some farm work. Just be conscientious where they've been and what they've been doing, right? So you can see that sinuses over here is plugged up with a lot of mucus and plug. Okay, so this is around the other states that grows some of those long-lived birds. So we don't want to bring them over here. And anyway, I might fail to mention this. So when we're talking about pneumovirus, I think my hypothesis there, I know my hypothesis is, has anybody been around turkeys? So in North Carolina, they see a clear link between the farms that broke, the broiler farms that broke, and a nearby turkey farm. So again, creatures on 2 legs move things around. Yeah. Now, obviously, wild birds can also do that, sparrows, but we gotta think about the human connection too. All right. Now this is a backyard flock near Georgetown, Delaware. So when the coryza thing was kind of hot, everybody was really concerned about it. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. That's the thing. When I was at the University of Delaware, I really fought hard to say, hey, let's keep the backyard flock testing free, because they will not go to us, and we will not know what's going on with those flocks. But anyway, look, they got LT, they got mycoplasma, they got coryza. I mean, everything under the sun. Yeah, it's not just one thing. It's just one piled up on top of the other. Right? They got a lot of baggage on them. Look at their eyes right here. So when that gets to a young flock, that's still naive. It will rip right through it like a knife through hot butter. All right. So this is more for the vets. They say, well, they all look alike. The nice thing about it is the labs, we're fortunate, they have top of the line DNA testing that actually can give you answers in a day or so. These are all DNA tests. Okay. They're very specific. So this is LT. So when you see this almond-shaped eye, and they have this clear liquid, and they're gasping, that's LT. Okay, that's bad news too. You'll lose a lot of birds. So some companies are vaccinating through the water right now. Okay, so if you grow for the 3 companies that vaccinate through the water around 7 to 10 days. Normally it was like 14 days, but now they want to try it a little bit earlier. Okay, this was LT and mycoplasma in those backyard birds that I mentioned. This is bronchitis right here. So we got good diagnostic tools to really get to it. Of course, it's really important to diagnose it correctly, so you will know exactly what vaccines you need to use. All right, let's talk about inclusion body hepatitis. Anybody here that's seen this disease? Probably not around these parts. It usually hits the small birds a lot, and it has more to do with density. Okay, so if you pack in 42,000 birds in there in a small house, I mean, it really gets things going. But those birds just are grown up to like 35 days, right? That's the saving grace there. You pack them in, there's a little bit more disease risk, but you harvest them earlier, okay? But if you're growing a bird almost up to 9 weeks, you get a little bit nervous when there's disease, right? Because you got a long way to go, right? But anyway, look at this liver right here. This is a normal liver. Looks like a cherry wood. But this one looks yellow just because it has jaundice. Okay, so this is jaundice right here. It attacks the liver, but it also attacks the immune system. And we think Gumboro disease also makes it more severe. Okay. All right. This is an organ called the bursa of Fabricius. This is the organ primarily responsible for the immune system of a bird. So if this is destroyed early, then the immune system gets destroyed. Okay. The bigger, the better right here. So certain farms right here. Okay. These are 5 bursas from one farm right here. Good. But look at this. Not good, right? Not good. Okay. So this is a different vaccine, and I think they pulled out a vaccine that they use in the egg right here. Okay. So that was good. If I were a vaccine manufacturer, and we want our customers to see this. Like, yeah, welcome back. But again, if the market's not good, some of these companies will start cutting things as well, especially in the summertime. There's less disease pressure. They would lay off some of these vaccines because these vaccines are not cheap. Okay? Yes. And microscopically, the lymphocytes, without getting too wonky, those are the soldier cells, right? The reason why they're small is because they're destroyed. Okay? So think about this whole organ right here is like a soldier's barracks. You destroy the barracks, and along with the soldiers in there is nothing to defend you, right? So here's what's concerning. This is, when is this one here? This was just recently. Do you think this is good or bad? This is a Delmarva company. So now you know what normal is, right? Yeah. Not too good, right? Yeah. But this is sort of like a calculated decision right here. See, the thing is, the perfect gift for a veterinarian is, hey, what do you want for a Christmas present? Well, I want a vaccine that vaccinates for probably everything that I want in one shot, right? Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, but the technology is not there yet. What I'm saying here is that there is an egg vaccine that is vaccinated for IBD, but if you have an LT outbreak in the area, they would prioritize using an LT vaccine in the egg. So this LT vaccine in the egg, if you're using it, you could not use it. You could not combine it with an IBD vaccine in the egg. You have to make a choice. So they had to make a hard choice here, which is the bigger problem, right? In this case, they made a hard choice because this is a large bird company. They said, we are under threat with LT. We will make a sacrifice play first. We'll be fine. We'll get through this. Winter is not going to be forever. We just want to make sure that these long-lived birds that we invested in gets to the plant. That's the thing with LT. It's just we want what we promised the plant to get. They need to get it, right? So it just messes up the forecasting. Yes, go ahead.
So the bursa, when we had the infectious bursa disease,
Yes.
that's not. I always thought it was like a bursa, on your in a joint, like kind of thing.
It kind of is. Bursa is like a pouch, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this really looks like a pouch, like a bag. So this is not a solid organ.
Right.
On at the tail end, near the.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like it's in there.
No, it's not in a joint, but certainly it's in the highway. Think about the gut and the airway like two highway systems. So if you want to do security on the highway, what do? You put checkpoints on it, right? So certainly we got lymphoid organs in our eyes, in our mouth, and also at the tail end right here. So this is a tonsil, basically, a big one.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it detects a foreign agent, it swells. Right? They say, hey, let's make more soldiers. And that's what it is, right? But here's this virus is a special killer. It likes to kill the immune cells. So when you kill the immune cells, there's no more soldiers to. So this is foundational. We vaccinate our breeders for this, so they're good. But we also put another vaccine in the egg. So before they hit the ground, we want them to start developing immunity. Okay, but then again, we lived in an area basically that where this originated. I mean, there's a reason why Gumboro is in Sussex County, and this company right here grows in Sussex County. It's almost like the song "New York, New York," right? If you can make it in Delmarva, you can make it anywhere, right? All right. So a direct result of that, enough of that bursa, because that's not where you really play on, right? But this is where it hurts your pocket. All this pus right here, this is E. coli. This is when the birds start dying. So when the birds do not have adequate immunity, because they got IBH, they got Marek's, they got, I'm going to name a whole lot of disease. I don't have to really. But ultimately, this is what kills the bird right here, secondary bacterial infection. Okay. Not only that, we also see dermatitis, right? So this is a lot of like rapidly decomposing bird. And that's really frustrating for a grower. They look great, and then you lose them at the tail end, which is not good. There is a good school of thought that says yes. But at the same time, also in that school of thought that it's also immunosuppressive. Yeah. Now, my good friend Buzz Klopp, that was his master's thesis. And I'm sorry.
Which is caused by coccidium. The immune depression.
It could be, but really, it's the reason why people talk about derm and coccidiosis. They think coccidiosis pokes holes, injures the gut, and then you got the bacterial Clostridium just becoming systemic. Anyway, this is what keeps companies awake at night: coccidiosis, gut diseases, right? We talk about infectious bronchitis, laryngotracheitis, dermatitis. So basically what we have talked about certainly is top of mind. This is a survey of the primary disease problems in broilers. And certainly we have talked about a lot of them already, right? So I don't want to be talking about something unique and interesting. I want to be talking about something that really is impactful for you guys. So this is coccidiosis right here. Look at this. If this is the gut lining, this is the intestine, and you see blood, that could be a good thing. Okay? So a bad coccidiosis would kill hundreds of birds really quickly. Fortunately, we vaccinate for this, or if you're not vaccinated for it, you have it in your medication. So check your feed tickets. You will see some like weird stuff in there. It will say for coccidiosis, for necrotic enteritis. And if you're NAE, you either use coccidiosis vaccine and certain drugs only. And this is primarily the biggest casualty in how we changed how to grow chickens. You know, in the 90s and the 2000s, we got more tools. We are allowed to put in more medications in our feed. This is well controlled. Now it's a different story. All right. So for a grower, you see a lot of birds dying on their bellies or even on their backs, and you have this greenish bloated belly right here. And it's because of the gut being bloated. So if I open that up, it will look bloody like this, right? A lot of dead birds. This got that really gutter smell as well. Okay. Now, in my world, we look at microscopes. So I have a veterinarian friend at the University of Delaware that looks at all of the microscopes. This is what the gut looks like. It looks like a lush lawn of grass. Okay. All of these organs right here are responsible for absorbing all the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, calories, and all that stuff. Well, imagine if that gets destroyed by parasites. Okay. See those, when we talk about cocci, these are microscopic little buggers that is parasitic to the gut. It starts to destroy it. And later on, you could not even recognize those little blades of grass anymore. They're called villi. So when this happens, there is nothing to absorb the nutrients. And in most cases, these birds are dead anyway. Okay. So the Clostridium, for the two nurses over here, Clostridium are a bacteria that secretes a lot of toxins. That's why the birds die within hours because of the toxin. Okay. And here's the goal for most of us. I think for all companies, they will be using cocci vaccine at some point. Eventually, here in the spring, most likely you'll be on cocci vaccine. The goal for cocci vaccine is a live vaccine. You want the infection to go on, but not be a raging fire. Okay? What you want is a little blip right here, around 17 to 23 days. This vaccine doubles itself, multiplies every week. So every 5 to 7 days, those little parasites would get into the gut, make the bird feel, not so good. And then a week later, it just doubles again or even multiplies several times. So you might have a blip. So this is not mortality chart right here, but you will have a mortality around this area. That's generally okay as long as you don't lose a lot of birds, right? You want them to get that infection so that later on you don't lose a lot of birds. Okay. Now, if you're on medication, that medication just shuts down the cocci. Okay. Problem is though, if you have a high challenge farm, the minute they put the birds, the day they put those birds on withdrawal feed, they're kind of unprotected. It's almost like raising kids, If they're too clean, they don't get the immunity, right? So basically the cocci vaccine is like tough love. Oh, you scrape that off, or you tangled with somebody in school and said, was the other guy worse off than you? Toughen up because life is hard kind of a thing. But here, the medication does all the job, but it doesn't develop the immunity. Okay, but vaccines are cheaper alternatives than actually using tons of medication. So this has become a favorite. And if you manage it well, it'll be fine. Okay. Now, obviously, any infectious disease, infectious vaccines, you need to really partner with growers, right? We don't want those birds unnecessarily stressed. There are some natural stressors already. Anytime you change from one feed to the other, that kind of disrupts the gut a little bit. And that's where some of these bad things happen. Okay. At 21 days, they lose the maternal antibodies. Basically, these are antibodies from the mother passed on. It's almost like colostrum, but in a way. Okay. That gets depleted around 21 days. So after 21 days, some diseases go in there. Even though you're supposed to be vaccinated, the maternal antibodies wears out. And that's where these egg vaccines and live vaccines at day one, they really are important. So they make up for the depleted maternal antibodies. It's their time to protect the bird. All right, so in this case, those cocci vaccines, your birds get vaccinated too by pecking at the litter. Do you realize that? Okay. So if you're on cocci vaccine, and at some point you will, I'm pretty sure most of you are, if you got some fresh litter in there, mix it well. This is not well mixed. Okay? Because what happens here is the birds that will be on this side right here, they're not getting little doses of that cocci on the litter. We want small doses to tickle the immune response. So in houses that are new with new litter, they're in danger of having what we call new house syndrome. When they get cocci in there, it just spreads like wildfire. You lose several hundred birds. What you want is a controlled dose of an infection. It's almost like a mumps party, right? Hey, somebody's got mumps. Get some of the kids in there so they'll get it early and they can get on with their lives. What we don't want is a walloping infection. You know, the thing with cocci is a numbers game. We want them to get exposed with a few hundred eggs, not a few 100,000 to 1,000,000 eggs at one time. Okay? All right. Somebody mentioned runting stunting syndrome, right? Remember those blades of grass, which is good, right? That's a good gut, right? Is this a good gut? Not really, right? They're like little knobs. So what happens here is this virus attacks. Okay, it's no longer a parasite, but it's a virus. It just attacks those villi, and it's same effect, right? It destroys the villi. The bird cannot absorb nutrients anymore. And this happens in the first week. Okay. Now, what companies do, and I believe most of them do, they put a custom vaccine. They call it autogenous vaccine. That's the reason why we go to some of your farms, sample some of these birds. Eventually, if we find a virus that's unique, that has not been in your vaccine, they will try to include it in your vaccine in the next 6 to 8 months. But it's a long process to make a vaccine. Okay? Since we're almost playing catch up. You know, these viruses, they mutate into something new to try to evade the immune system, and we try to respond by updating the vaccine. It's almost like a arms race in a way, right? And so it's aptly named runting stunting syndrome. I mean, this is a prime flock right here. So this is not one of those things where you have vast different ages. Okay, look how small those birds are compared to the relatively bigger ones over here. And look, they're having some diarrhea, right? Okay, so that was right here, right? So, I mean, at some point, I mean, the companies that say, well, he or she's been culling here. I mean, look, several dozens already. She's trying her best, but she needs some help because I don't think this is her fault anymore, right? So it's also good to be diligent with your culling because you're trying to demonstrate to the company that you're doing your part. So when anything goes up, they know that, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt, right? So definitely this is something that we can address, but it's not easy. If you have Gumboro, you might be vaccinated for RSS, but you're not updated for Gumboro, your bird's still immunosuppressed. So again, for the veterinarian, sometimes it's a head scratcher because there's a lot of things to consider. All right, so here's one that probably is more dietary than anything. And this is kind of touchy, right? When you're talking about diets and stuff like that, right? But I didn't find cocci in this flock. I didn't find RSS. I didn't find anything that we have previously talked about. But still, the gut is running. Something is irritating the gut, right? Obviously, right? You want this. You don't want this. So other things in the feed that's harder to pinpoint, and this is James' world right here, right? So there's some things in the feed like, usually the feed is made up mostly of corn and soybeans, right? If you got moldy corn, that could irritate the gut, certainly. That could immunosuppress birds. especially at the tail end. I mean, if you got a pile of corn, you're basically scraping the bottom end right now, right? Also, soybeans. Okay, if the soybeans that they get is undercooked or overcooked, it's not readily absorbable and actually block other nutrients. Okay, so you can actually see here. I mean, it's trying to expel something. Also, it's likes to eat a lot of feathers, right? So could be a sign of deficiency of something. It's almost like this bird likes to eat to make up for something, right? And this is where we're trying to work closely with companies, and that's something at their level is top of mind. But again, it's not always an easy fix. I mean, if you already have a lot of feed, nobody's going to throw that feed away, right? You can actually mix it in or put some amendments, but I mean, it's already going to go through the system. And it's harder too because of all this all veg, movement and all that stuff. The thing with all veg is that you cannot easily make up for certain deficiencies because there's nothing like meat and bone meal to fill in the gaps of micronutrients. So you can see it from a grower perspective. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's what I've been suspecting along. But again, the solution here lies with close coordination with the companies. I mean, it all starts with communication, right? So I mean, it's a team sport. I mean, you just can't move the needle alone on this one. But certainly, you can give continuous feedback. I've seen people struggle with this for 2 to 3 years before they started making serious attempts on trying certain things. Because usually when we say try new things, that would be costing the company something in terms of, okay, we got to use mycotoxin binders and all that stuff. Okay. All right. I'm not going to go full professor on you because it's so basically, feed, light, air, water, sanitation, feed ingredient quality, downtime is also a big thing, especially we're dealing with infectious disease. So certainly we want adequate downtime. Sometimes you don't get that, right? When the market's good, yeah, they try to cut the downtime because they're trying to catch the market. It's just the reality. But anyway, thank you for your attention. Yes, any questions at this point?
What are your thoughts on probiotics?
It works. It works. In broilers, though, it's not the first line of defense. What they will do for us is, okay, they will make you achieve the same performance without probiotics by making sure that all of the other inputs, like, okay, feed, light, air, water, sanitation, they're all up to specs. And you can certainly grow a bird without probiotics. It shouldn't be a crutch. And I think probiotics work, especially when you got substandard of something. Yeah, but again, here in the broiler sector, I mean, if the market's not good, probiotics is one of the first things that goes. That added cost. But yeah, a comment on probiotics is it's never as good as antibiotics. So it's not a direct replacement. But a combination of this and other additives can actually make a difference. But for years, we've been expecting, it's never as good as an antibiotic. Well, it will never be. Right? But that's the new reality. If they don't want to buy your chicken just because you're using antibiotics, then that's a place for probiotics and organics to come into play.
Is there a high-path AI vaccine company? I thought I saw something.
There is. As a matter of fact, we make it. It's being used in different countries around the world. Here's the thing about vaccines, though. Our trading partners, the ones that buy imported U.S. chicken, are saying the minute you use the vaccine, we will not get chickens from you. And guess what? Broilers are the first one not to do it. The layers, but they don't export too much, right? Most of our revenue for exports is in broilers. So broilers get a big say on how this is used. We will not We will not impose on the turkeys. We will not impose on the layers, but they don't export too much. So we're sort of like the big gorilla in the room in terms of making that decision. And right now, the decision is no. If we find it, we'll destroy it. We'll start all over again. That farm over there in like, what, maybe 6 weeks is already back online. Now, if you're a layer facility, that would take months to get back online, right? And so again, that's a blessing in broilers. When we hit a bump in the road, we can recover. We can go back.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah, it's hard on individual growers, for sure. Now, here's the thing, though. Most vaccines, vaccination is not a substitute for biosecurity, for sure. Let's agree on that one. I think the two nurses over here, again, I keep picking on them, right? They know that when you're vaccinated for something, especially in the poultry industry, our vaccines do not prevent infection. They prevent shedding of the virus and prevent severe disease. So some of those vaccinated flocks are still shedding the virus. And that's the reason why some of these exporters worry about it. It's a signal when you vaccinate for something that you're willing to live with the disease. You're kind of saying, well, we can't eradicate it. I guess it's time to just live with it.
But we have seen things changing. We're seeing Europe starting to vaccinate for it. We're seeing a lot of other countries around the world looking at vaccine. How long the world remains anti-vaccine?
Right. Yeah, it's not a closed book, especially when we're getting high-path AI almost every year. It's like at some point, it can't be all search and destroy, right?
Have you seen, since we've had high path, have you, and we stepped up our biosecurity, have you seen a drop in other diseases?
Yes. So that's the silver lining on high-path AI. I think some fence sitters on biosecurity start to make it their priority, and some of the other diseases that we just choose to live with are actually controllable. You know, I would love to say LT, but not this year, right?
Well, thanks, Dan. We really appreciate it.